You're listening to Audiology. Support our work on Patreon and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. Introduction. Grigory Yefimovich Rasputin was a mystical figure and self-proclaimed holy man from Russia. He gained fame and notoriety for developing a close relationship with the family of Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, which allowed him to wield significant power during the waning years of the Russian Empire. Rasputin was born to peasant parents in Siberia, in the small village of Pokrovskoye, part of the Tyumensky uyezd in the larger Tobolsk Governorate, which is now within today's Tyumen Oblast. His spiritual awakening came about during a pilgrimage in 1897, after which he was often considered a monk or a stranik, someone on a religious quest, despite having no formal status in the Russian Orthodox Church. In the early 20th century, he made his way to St. Petersburg and managed to impress numerous leaders in religion and society, establishing himself as an influential persona. In 1905, Rasputin was introduced to Tsar Nicholas II and his wife, Empress Alexandra. By 1906, he became involved as a healer for their son, Alexei, who was afflicted with hemophilia. While some viewed him as a true prophet and healer, others considered him nothing more than a sham. His prominence peaked in 1915 when the Tsar went to command Russian forces in World War I, leaving Rasputin with access to substantial power as he and the Tsarina took charge of domestic affairs. This led to widespread disapproval as Russia faced defeats and hardships. Rasputin's life was marked by controversy and he became deeply unpopular, leading to his murder by a group of aristocrats determined to end his sway over the royal family in December 1916. After his death, Rasputin's infamous legacy was often pointed to as one of the factors that contributed to the fall of the Romanov dynasty. Despite the numerous speculative tales about his life and influence, Rasputin continues to fascinate people as an enigmatic character in Russian history and popular lore. Early life. Grigory Rasputin, the notorious Russian mystic, was born to a peasant family in the village of Pokrovskoye, situated along the Tura River in what was then the Tobolsk Governorate of the Russian Empire, now part of the Tyumen region. His birth was recorded on January 21st in the Gregorian calendar, which corresponded to January 9th in the Julian calendar, in the year 1869, and he was baptized the day after. His name was chosen in honor of Saint Gregory of Nyssa, whose feast day was close to Rasputin's birthday. Details on Rasputin's parents are scarce, but his father, Yefim, was a peasant farmer, a role within the church community, and served as a government courier. Yefim married Anna Parshakova in 1863. The couple had several children, but tragically, all but Grigory and possibly one other, Feodosia, died young. Little is known for certain about Rasputin's early life, as historical accounts are spotty and often embellished. Historians mostly agree that he was not well educated in his youth and didn't learn to read or write until later in life. Early records suggest he was a rebellious youth with minor instances of misbehavior, but details of any serious criminal activities from this period are not substantiated. As a young man, Rasputin ventured roughly 250 kilometers from his home to Abalak, where he met Praskovia Dubrovina. After a few months together, they wed in February 1887. Praskovia stayed in Pokrovskoye, maintaining her loyalty to Rasputin throughout his subsequent travels and ascent to notoriety. The couple had many children, of whom only Dmitri, Maria, and Varvara lived to become adults. Religious conversion. In 1897, Rasputin took a keen interest in spirituality and left his hometown of Pokrovskoye for a religious journey. The reasons behind this are not entirely clear. While some suggest he was fleeing from consequences related to accusations of horse theft, others attribute his departure to possible divine visions, or perhaps the influence of a young theology student named Melity Zaborovsky. At the age of 28, having been married for a decade and father to a young son with another child on the way, Rasputin seemed propelled to make this radical change due to an emotional or spiritual upheaval, as historian Smith posits. His pilgrimage to the St. Nicholas Monastery at Verkhoturye was a pivotal point for Rasputin. During this transformative visit, he encountered a respected and humbling religious figure named Makary. Rasputin might have spent a few months there, and it is believed that he acquired literacy skills during this period. However, he later disapproved of some monks there regarding their lifestyle and criticized the restrictive nature of monastic life. When he returned home, those who knew him observed a stark change. He was untidy, lived as a vegetarian, abstained from alcohol, and displayed heightened religious fervor. Following this experience, Rasputin adopted the life of a strannik, an itinerant holy man, often leaving his village for lengthy periods to visit sacred sites, potentially traveling as far as Mount Athos, a spiritual hub, in 1900. By the dawn of the 20th century, Rasputin had attracted a small group of followers, mostly his relatives and local villagers, who joined him in prayer. In his father's house, where he still lived, they used a root cellar to conduct secretive prayer gatherings. These sessions, and Rasputin's broader behavior, drew suspicion and hostility from the local cleric and other residents. Gossip spread that Rasputin's female acolytes performed ritualistic washing rites on him, among other unusual practices. There was also talk of his possible affiliation with the Klisti, a religious sect associated with extreme and scandalous rituals. However, after multiple investigations, there was no substantive proof that Rasputin was ever part of this sect, thus dismissing the hearsay of his involvement with the Klisti. Rise to prominence. During the early 20th century, in the vast expanse of Siberia, stories about a man called Rasputin and his magnetic presence began to circulate. Around 1904 or 1905, Rasputin set out for Kazan, gaining a reputation there as a perceptive spiritual elder, capable of guiding those grappling with inner turmoil toward peace. Despite whispers of inappropriate relations with some of his female adherents, Rasputin earned the respect of key local religious figures, including Archimandrite Andrei and Bishop Christinos. They were so taken with his spiritual insight that they provided him with a letter of introduction to Bishop Sergei of the Theological Seminary at the Alexander Nevsky Monastery in St. Petersburg. Rasputin's journey brought him to the Alexander Nevsky Lavra, where he mingled with top ecclesiastical dignitaries, notably the seminary inspector, Archimandrite Theophan, who held sway in the St. Petersburg social sphere and would later become the imperial family's spiritual advisor. Charmed by Rasputin, Theophan welcomed him into his home, establishing him as a fixture in prestigious gatherings where the elite debated religious matters. It was in these circles that Rasputin convened with his preliminary high-profile supporters, although some would eventually turn their backs on him. Before Rasputin's emergence on the scene, St. Petersburg's upper crust had already embraced spiritualism and theosophy, showing a voracious appetite for the mystic and otherworldly. Rasputin, with his unconventional ideas and behaviors, became a tantalizing phenomenon among the city's upper echelons, who were in search of novelty amidst a backdrop of ennui and skepticism. Rasputin stood out even more because of his Russian origins, unlike other foreign mystics who had previously captivated the St. Petersburg elite. Historians point to some discrepancies regarding Rasputin's movements in the early stages. Furman believes Rasputin only spent a few months in St. Petersburg before returning to his home in Pokrovskoye in 1903, while Smith suggests that the details of his comings and goings between his arrival and 1905 are uncertain. What is clear, however, is that by 1905, Rasputin had ingratiated himself with influential aristocrats, including the Montenegrin Black Princesses, Militsa and Anastasia, who were connected to the Russian Tsar Nicholas II and facilitated Rasputin's introduction to the royal family. Rasputin met Tsar Nicholas II on November 1, 1905, at Peterhof Palace. The Tsar noted the encounter with the man of God from Tobolsk province in his diary. Rasputin then briefly returned to Pokrovskoye, but came back to St. Petersburg by July 1906, seeking an audience with Nicholas to offer a holy icon. His interactions with the Tsar's family grew, leading to a meeting with their children. Nicholas and Alexandra, the Russian emperor and empress, came to believe that Rasputin held the divine ability to heal their son, Alexei, who was afflicted with hemophilia. The exact timeline of when Rasputin was first sought after for his purported healing capabilities is debated among historians. Fiji suggests it was as early as November 1905, while Furman speculates it may have been in October 1906 that Rasputin was summoned to pray for Alexei's well-being. Healer to Alexei Nikolaevich. Rasputin's sway over the Russian royal family, particularly with Empress Alexandra, was largely due to the perception that he had a mystical ability to alleviate the symptoms and halt the bleeding of her son Alexei, who was a hemophiliac. Historian Mark Farrow notes that Alexandra was deeply attached to Rasputin because she was convinced he possessed the power to heal her child. Harold Schuckman observed that Rasputin had become an essential part of the imperial household. The exact timeline of when Rasputin became aware of Alexei's medical condition and began acting as his healer is unclear. He might have known about the Tsarevich's hemophilia as early as 1906 and was asked by Alexandra to pray for Alexei during a severe bleeding incident in 1907, after which Alexei started to recover. Following this, Alexandra's friend Anna Virubova was persuaded of Rasputin's extraordinary healing abilities and promoted him fervently. An anecdote detailed by Olga Ilyin reveals Rasputin's peculiar conduct. In one instance, at the very moment his dinner was being served, he began combing his greasy hair, prompting the server to remove the dish in disgust. In 1912, Alexei suffered a serious hemorrhagic episode following a rough carriage incident. At the brink of death from his injuries, Alexandra, in desperation, reached out to Rasputin, who was in Siberia, to pray for her son. Rasputin's response was that the boy would not die, a message that brought comfort to Alexandra and seemed to be followed by an inexplicable improvement in Alexei's condition. His bleeding ceased the following day. Dr. S.P. Fedorov, one of the attending physicians, confessed the recovery was medically baffling and could see why Alexandra would consider Rasputin a man of miracles because of his apparent influence on the bleeding. Historian Robert K. Massey has described the incident as highly enigmatic within the Rasputin narrative. The reason behind Alexei's recovery remains uncertain. It could have been Rasputin's counsel for rest, the emotional relief his message provided, or both. Alexandra's firm belief was that Rasputin had performed a miracle, making him indispensable for her son's well-being. Some historians, like Farrow, suggest that Rasputin may have used hypnosis in other instances to control Alexei's bleeding. Other explanations include that Rasputin limited the use of aspirin. The pain-relieving effects were known, but its blood-thinning properties were not understood until decades later, which could have inadvertently helped manage Alexei's condition. Relationship with royalty's children. Alexei and his brothers and sisters were instructed to think of Rasputin as a close confidant and were encouraged to confide in him. In the fall of 1907, their aunt, Grand Duchess Olga Alexandrovna, was brought by their father, Nicholas, to meet Rasputin in the nursery. The children, dressed in their white nightwear, appeared to be fond of Rasputin and comfortable in his presence, as recollected by Olga Alexandrovna. Rasputin's bond with the Tsar's children was also reflected in the affectionate telegrams he sent them. Rasputin wrote to a 9-year-old Maria in 1908, calling her endearingly and expressing his miss for their innocent conversations about nature and looking forward to seeing her again. He also sent words of spiritual encouragement about bearing life's burdens joyfully and peacefully. In February of 1909, Rasputin encouraged all the children via telegram to appreciate and love nature, mirroring the activities of the Virgin Mary. However, one of the tutors, Sofia Ivanovna Tyucheva, was appalled when she found out Rasputin had access to the girls' nursery at bedtime. She pushed for Rasputin to be banned from these private quarters, but after expressing her concerns, Rasputin's visits stopped at the request of Tsar Nicholas. However, this led to conflict, as evidenced by a letter from Maria's sister Tatiana, who at 12 years old begged their mother, Alexandra, to forgive her governess who was trying to interfere with their relationship with Rasputin. Tyucheva shared her worries with other royal family members, resulting in shock and disdain, although there was no evidence of Rasputin acting inappropriately with the children. Nicholas's sister, Grand Duchess Ksenia Alexandrovna, couldn't comprehend Alex and the children's reverence for Rasputin, who she considered malicious and deceptive. She voiced her disbelief about Rasputin spending time with the girls during their bedtime routine. Amidst this, another nurse, Maria Ivanovna Vishnyakova, alleged that Rasputin raped her in the spring of 1910, although she had once been a supporter of his. The Tsarina Alexandra dismissed these allegations, attributing any of Rasputin's actions to being holy. However, when Vishnyakova's story was investigated, she was found with a Cossack from the Imperial Guard, leading to her dismissal in 1913. Rumors spread that Rasputin had intimate relationships with Alexandra and her daughters, with the circulation of impassioned letters and scandalous cartoons depicting Rasputin engaged in sexual acts with the imperial women. These exacerbated gossip throughout society. Nicholas eventually sent Rasputin away from St. Petersburg for a period, which upset Alexandra. Despite these scandals, the royal family's connection with Rasputin endured until his assassination on December 17, 1916. Alexandra noted shortly before his death how much Rasputin valued her daughters, appreciating their mature souls. Upon Rasputin's murder, the Grand Duchesses were reported by A. Mordvinov to be visibly shaken and somber, reflecting on their sofas, perhaps sensing the turbulent political shifts that were about to occur. Rasputin was laid to rest with an icon that bore signatures from the Tsarina and her daughters on the back. Controversies. The emperor's family trusted Rasputin for his supposed ability to heal, which gave him significant influence and power within the royal court. Nicholas II gave Rasputin the role of his lampadnik, a position that involved maintaining the palace's sacred lamps, thus ensuring regular interaction with the royal family. By the end of 1906, Rasputin had ingratiated himself sufficiently to request a name change from the Tsar, adopting Rasputin Novi. This privilege was quickly granted, which indicates that he enjoyed the emperor's favor even at that early stage. He didn't waste his advantageous position, exploiting it by taking bribes and sexual favors from those who wished to get close to him, and worked continuously to increase his influence. However, Rasputin's reputation was marred by scandal and opposition. Accusations of religious blasphemy, rape, and claims that he wielded excessive sway over the emperor threw him into controversy, with rumors suggesting he was even romantically involved with the empress. His defiance faced resistance from the Eastern Orthodox Church, with local clergy and a bishop investigating him for spreading heretical teachings. Prominent figures in St. Petersburg, including the Prime Minister and the Tsar's secret police, were among his detractors. Yet efforts to curb his presence at court or to banish him from the capital were in vain. Apart from his official activities, Rasputin was known for advocating that his physical interactions had purifying effects on others, engaging in drunken parties and having illicit affairs across the social spectrum. In 1909, a former supporter brought forth allegations of rape against him. This, alongside growing rumors of inappropriate behavior with young women, including the Tsar's own daughters, served to tarnish his image further. During the backdrop of World War I, Russia's socioeconomic landscape suffered considerably due to the war's impact, the end of feudalism, and bureaucratic interferences. Many blamed Empress Alexandra and Rasputin for the country's woes, with Nationalist Duma member Purishkevich publicly condemning them in November 1916. He criticized the imperial leaders as puppeteers controlled by Rasputin and the Empress, who he insinuated was a traitor, highlighting her German origins and suggesting her loyalties were not with Russia. Failed assassination attempt. On July 12th, using the old Julian calendar, or June 29th according to the Gregorian calendar, in 1914, Chionya Guseva, a 33-year-old peasant woman, carried out an attack on Rasputin. She ambushed Rasputin in Pokrovskoye, his hometown, by stabbing him in the abdomen. The attack left Rasputin in critical condition, and for a while his survival was uncertain. Following an operation and a period of recuperation at a hospital in Tyumen, he managed to survive the assassination attempt. Guseva was a devotee of Iliador, a former clergyman who initially was a supporter of Rasputin, but later turned against him due to Rasputin's reputed sexual misconduct and egotism in December of 1911. As a radical conservative with anti-Semitic views, Iliador was part of a circle of influential individuals who tried unsuccessfully to separate Rasputin from the royal family that same year. After their failure, Iliador was exiled from St. Petersburg and eventually stripped of his clerical status. While Guseva insisted that she had acted on her own initiative after reading about Rasputin in the press and deeming him to be a heretic and even the Antichrist, both the police and Rasputin himself suspected that Iliador was behind the plot. Iliador managed to escape abroad before he could be interrogated regarding the incident. As for Guseva, it was determined that she was legally insane and therefore not responsible for her attempt on Rasputin's life. Assassination. A coalition of Russian aristocrats, including Purishkevich, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, and Prince Felix Yusupov, believed that Rasputin's sway over Empress Alexandra was a danger to the empire. As a result, they hatched a plot to assassinate him in December 1916 by enticing him to the Yusupov residence on the Moika River. In the early hours of the 30th of December, 17th December Old Style, 1916, Rasputin was killed at Prince Yusupov's property. He suffered 3 gunshot wounds, the fatal one being a shot to his forehead at point-blank range. The precise details of his death are murky and subject to much conjecture. Smith has stated that the truth of what transpired at Yusupov's house on that fateful day might never be known. Despite this, Yusupov's depiction of the killing in his memoirs has become the most commonly accepted narrative. In Yusupov's version, he welcomed Rasputin into his basement after midnight and served him tea and cakes that had been secretly poisoned with cyanide. Rasputin refused the treats initially, but eventually started eating them, showing no signs of being poisoned, to Yusupov's astonishment. Rasputin then consumed 3 glasses of similarly poisoned Madeira wine, yet still exhibited no adverse effects. At around 2:30 a.m., Yusupov retrieved a gun from Purishkevich upstairs and, upon returning to the basement, shot Rasputin in the chest after directing him to focus on a crucifix and pray. The conspirators then attempted to stage Rasputin's return to his apartment by having Sukhotin wear his clothing. When Yusupov returned to ensure Rasputin was dead, he was attacked by the still-living Rasputin, but managed to break away and ascend to the palace courtyard. There, Purishkevich shot Rasputin, who then collapsed into the snow. The group wrapped Rasputin's body and threw it into the Little Nevka River from the Petrovsky Bridge. Unverified rumors claimed that Grand Duchess Tatiana, whom Rasputin supposedly tried to assault earlier, was present in disguise to exact revenge at the murder scene. The French ambassador to Russia, Maurice Paléologue, mentioned a rumor involving Tatiana witnessing Rasputin's castration, but he questioned its veracity. Dr. Carolyn Harris of the University of Toronto shared insights on Rasputin's death on its centenary, suggesting that the event might have been less sensational than presented by Yusupov. Rasputin's daughter mentioned her father's aversion to sweets, casting doubt on his consumption of the poisoned cakes. Moreover, the official autopsy omitted any mention of poisoning or drowning, citing a solo gunshot to the head as the cause of death. Death and aftermath. Word of Rasputin's demise spread rapidly, even before his remains were located. Smith recounts that shortly after Rasputin was killed, Purishkevich openly discussed the incident with a pair of soldiers and a police officer who had been responding to noises of gunfire, though he implored them to keep it a secret. A formal inquiry commenced the following day. On the afternoon of December 30th, 1916, Julian calendar, December 17th, 1916, the Stock Exchange Gazette reported Rasputin's passing as occurring after a gathering at a prestigious residence in the heart of the city. The discovery of bloodstains on the Petrovsky Bridge's handrail and a shoe on the ice beneath initiated a police search. On January 1st, Julian calendar, December 19th, Rasputin's corpse was discovered frozen under the ice in the river, downriver from the bridge by about 200 meters. Dmitry Kosarodov, the city's lead forensic expert, conducted an examination of the body. Although Kosarodov's original report went missing, he later disclosed that Rasputin had endured significant violence, including 3 bullet wounds, with one at close range to the forehead, a cut on his side, and multiple injuries that seemed to occur after his death. There was a single mangled bullet found in Rasputin's body, but it was too damaged and common to be traced, according to Kosorotov. He also did not find any signs of poison. Both Smith and Furman corroborate that Kosorotov didn't find water in Rasputin's lungs, disproving theories that he was alive when thrown into the water. Later claims surfaced about Rasputin being mutilated, specifically that his penis had been cut off, but Kosorotov confirmed that his genitalia were unharmed. Rasputin was laid to rest on January 2nd, Julian calendar, December 21, within a modest church that Verubova was having constructed at Tsarskoye Selo. His funeral was a private affair, with only the royal family and close confidants in attendance. Excluded from the ceremony were Rasputin's wife, mistress, and children, though his daughters did go to Verubova's home to meet with the imperial family that same day. The imperial family intended to have a church constructed over where Rasputin was interred. Subsequently, after the abdication of Nicholas in March 1917, soldiers acting on Alexander Kerensky's orders exhumed and incinerated Rasputin's body to prevent his burial site from becoming a symbol for those loyal to the former regime.